So again, welcome everyone to the Red Hot discussion on RAMP. RAMP has been live now for over a month. So I'm sure everyone in here has at least logged in and done something in the system. Hopefully you're finding your way through. I know we've had a lot of people in and working in the system. I don't know if we have the updated numbers, but I know we were tracking some numbers for a while. So maybe we'll share those with you today. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to continue watching the RAMP resources webpage. We continue to add new job aids, new FAQs to the FAQ page as we are continuing to learn more about RAMP and how we will be using it moving forward. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to continue watching that page. And then just a couple red notes. I know that the normal red course series has been on hold for a bit here as we've been doing a lot of RAMP training and getting ready for this transition. We are hoping to offer an abbreviated cycle of red courses later this fall. And then hopefully by the winter cycle, we'll have all of our red courses updated to reflect RAMP, and they'll all be offered at that time. So thanks everyone for your patience if you've been looking for some of those. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mark so we can get started talking about RAMP.
All right. Thank you very much, Melanie. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of you taking a little bit of time to listen to this red hot session. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Sweet. I'm the Director of Grants and Contracts and Research and Sponsored Programs. And what we're going to be doing today is kind of giving you a little debrief of where we are. We've been live for a month, as Melanie said. And what I'd like to do is kind of remind everyone of a few things so that they kind of know where we are and where we're going. A few things that we've learned in the last month. Some common questions that we received, some of the answers and some of the guidance, and remind folks about the various resources. And then we'll have time for an open discussion and Q&A. And I'm joined today with by several people from RSP. So we've got Jenny and Andrea and Vasanthi who are going to be helping, and then Bridget and Brenda will also be kind of chiming in as necessary. The first few slides I'm going to go through are really meant to kind of remind all of us where we are and then where we still have left to go. And the RAMP system has gone live. And again, the RAMP system is a vendor product from Huron that comprises a number of different modules. And for the most part, it is our system for pre-award and non-financial award management. And then it's really important to remember that this larger administrative transformation project really involves replacing our HR and our finance system with Workday. And this Venn diagram does a really great job of kind of explaining how the Huron Research Suite, which we call RAMP on our campus, intersects with Workday, which is the replacement for all of the financial aspects and the HR aspects for the university. We've come a really long way. As you can see, this started back in January of 2022. There was actually some activities prior to January of 2022, and we're live. We are using RAMP, and it's not really exactly the end of the project, because the project team who helped us implement RAMP is starting to work on the next phase of this larger project. They are focusing a lot on helping Milwaukee and the other UW comprehensive campuses implement a version of RAMP for themselves. And more importantly, what The next phase of this project is for UW-Madison is integrating RAMP with Workday. So there's going to be a fair amount of work that the project team and Do It and the Workday team and Huron technical groups are going to be doing to integrate RAMP into Workday. The other thing I want to point out here and remind everyone is that, again, the RAMP system is a vendor provided product from Huron, and UW-Madison is a very large client of theirs now, and we're going to continue to work with them to ensure that we can get some enhancements deployed within the RAMP system to really make our lives a little bit more efficient. So over time, we will be getting upgrades and patches from Huron that we will be taking advantage of. And this constant improvement and patching or feature enhancements is going to be, we're going to be seeing that a lot more going forward with a lot of our products. This is how Workday operates as well. There are very frequent and scheduled deployment or releases of new functionality. So I just want to point that out, that even though we've gone live and we're on a version of the software now, it's going to be changing. And what we see today on August 1st, 2023 is likely going to be, it's going to look different when we are using it 4 years from now. Again, I'd like to just remind folks that within RAMP, there are 3 primary modules, and we're going to be primarily focusing on the grants and agreements module, but the export control module, which is used by the export control office, is also part of this RAMP project. And really, we've replaced Whisper and Cayuse. That's really the key point here. RAMP does our routing and approval, the contract agreement management, and a lot of the non-financial pieces, as well as direct system-to-system grants.gov proposal processing. So we've heard a lot of comments, gotten questions, and internally here in RSP, we've talked quite a bit about this, that generally what we're doing at the very basic levels has not changed. What's changed is the mechanism or the mode or the buttons that we're pushing. People are still looking for funding, they're applying, we're submitting, we're getting the awards. And all of those general processes and requirements and needs for documents to be included in proposals, all of that remains the same. The thing that's changed is how we add them to a funding record or a proposal, a funding proposal or an award or an agreement. So that's really how the RAMP system fits in here. But generally, the very high level, we're still doing the basic life cycle of sponsored programs. It's August 1st. We've passed June 26th. RAMP went live. You all did it. We did it together, and we all survived. And Melanie mentioned this. I wanted to share a few statistics that we pulled, and we actually pulled these 1 month after we've been live with RAMP. We've had over 1,600 unique logins. So those are investigators, faculty, research administrators, all who've gone into RAMP, and that unique count is just really shows you how broadly it's been used in the last month. We've had over 540 funding proposal records created. And by now it's well over requesting much more than $315 million. There's been over 500 new agreement records created, over 450 mods. We've had over 185 new award records created, and 106 of them have been completely processed and fully set up in SFS. And you can see we've had almost 100 SF424, those are the grants.gov proposal records created, and 28 of them have been successfully submitted to grants.gov. And I do want to make a little shout out here. Mandy Kilcoyne and School of Pharmacy, they submitted the very first grants.gov record. I think it was just like a day or two after we went live with RAMP. So congratulations to School of Pharmacy. I'd like to, some of this is we're going to be reiterating because these are really important points that we want you all to remember, and then also share with your colleagues that may not be on this red hot session. Our guidance page that has all of our training resources, please continue to reference that as very, very frequently. It is where all of our training materials, there are user guides, job aids, the micro learning videos, the recorded training sessions that we've had prior to go live, all of that information is on this web page, and we continue to refine and update that. And then, as Melanie mentioned, the RED courses, that material needs to be updated to include how we use RAMP within our business processes. Another thing that is really important that we want to make sure that you're all aware of is our routing guidance on the RSP website has been updated to reflect the RAMP system. So if you're not sure how to route something, go to our main homepage and you can look it up on the search, and it will give you instructions on how to get those things through the system to RSP. So please continue to refer to our training materials. And then if you have questions about routing and getting things around, the routing guidance is updated. I also want to remind everyone of a few things that we've gotten some questions about, and I think it's important to mention this again. SFS, which is PeopleSoft, that is not going away until we go live with Workday, which is in January of 2024. So RAMP right now is integrated with the shared financial system, which means when the awards team is working to generate a funding proposal that's been awarded, that information is flowing from RAMP into SFS. So all of those new award IDs that are being created when we receive a notice of award, those award IDs, the AWD numbers, they're being pushed over into PeopleSoft and SFS, and those are going to be the new award IDs that you see in PeopleSoft. The project ID format, that is not changing. So the format of those project IDs remains the same, and those project IDs are actually pulled back into RAMP after the awards are generated and integrated between RAMP and SFS. It's also important to remember that Wiser continues to be the campus financial reporting tool. That does not change until we go live with Workday. And then something will be replacing Wiser. And the whole Workday crew and ATP are still working on that. So Wiser has been updated to allow you all to search for either the AWD numbers or the old MSN numbers from our old system. So all of those are available to be looked up in Wiser. And then another reminder here, the way sponsors are added to the system remains the same. There is a form on the RSP website where you go and you request a sponsor that is not in RAMP, that you fill out that request form, and then RSP will work to get that added. Right now, sponsors are actually added into SFS, and then they get populated back into RAMP. And it's going to work the same when we go live with Workday. They'll be created in Workday and then fed back into Ramp. It's also really important to recognize that we are all learning a new system. We are unlearning what we used to be able to do very quickly in the old system. And it's going to take a little bit more time until we are more comfortable with Ramp. So I think it's really important that we all recognize that some things are going to take a little bit longer. Some things are a little bit more complicated because we're not as familiar as we had been with our old system. And we need to give ourselves time, not only in processing things and getting them through the system. In other words, start earlier. But it's also just going to take more time because many of us are still trying to learn, do we click this link or that link? And to help with all of that, again, we're really encouraging you and your colleagues and people who are not on this call, if you can encourage them to go take a look at the Ramp resources page and go through all of the materials on that page. It's really filled with probably every answer that you need to know, and it's a great place to start. So with that, I really want to thank all of you. Every one of you has done a fantastic job in getting us to where we were on June 25th, getting to where we were June 26th, and where we are today on August 1st. And I know I'm speaking for everyone in RSP that we really, really appreciate all of the patience and kind consideration as we are all learning that we click this link and not that link in Ramp. So we really appreciate that everyone has been helping each other, and we really appreciate all of that patience. So with that, I want to also point out that we have continued some of the really successful post go live support. I think a lot of you took advantage of our office hours. We are continuing those for sure for the next 2 weeks. We've adjusted the schedule a little bit because the office hours had been staffed by proposal team members and award team and contracts team members. And we're reducing the number of office hours so that folks can work on processing proposals, awards, and contracts. So for the next 2 weeks, the schedule will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 a.m. to noon. It's a way to be able to drop into the office hour and get some immediate assistance. The link to get to the Zoom office hours is on that resource page, and it's available when the office hours are active. So again, that's for kind of immediate, urgent support. We're really hoping that people will take advantage of the training resources and look there first, as we're also kind of helping people find that information in the office hours. So if you look there first, you might be able to answer the question yourself, and then you'll probably remember how to do that the next time you encounter a similar situation. We also have if people want, maybe for their department, or if there's a group of departments or a large research group, if they want some individual coaching time, some one-on-one training time, we have this ability to request it. It's on that resource page, and Melanie's doing a great job of trying to coordinate those requests. And then, as we said a couple times, the Ramp mailbox, this would be for less urgent things. We have a team of people that is monitoring that mailbox during normal RSP business hours. And that's where you can send kind of a general question about Ramp, and we'll make sure that that gets to people who can answer that question. So before I go on, I'm wondering if there are any questions in the chat that we should stop and answer.
There were just a couple comments about updated resources on the webpage. So when existing job aids are updated, we do add a last revision date on each one of those PDFs, but moving forward, we're going to start adding just a little note in the hyperlink that says it when it was updated. So people will know when they go to the website, they'll see it right away and they'll see that they haven't something that's a little bit different or new on the website. So that is all that's in the chat.
Okay, great. So I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit and start talking about some of the common questions that we've received over the last couple weeks since June 26th. And these aren't necessarily in any particular order. So the first thing isn't necessarily the thing that we've received the most questions about. But we have received a number of questions about linking protocols between Arrow and Ramp. And again, this is pretty different than the old system where we actually now kind of can see the protocols that are in Arrow and link them directly in Ramp. But the way this happens, it's actually not any different than the pre-Ramp days in that the linking is done within Arrow. So the study teams or the PI, they can go into the protocol in Arrow, and then they can associate the funding proposal or the award from Ramp to that protocol. And the link here on the screen, again, we'll send these slides out to everyone so you'll be able to look to it. These are the instructions for linking within Arrow back to the funding information that's in Ramp. Similar to our old system, the data from Ramp is fed into Arrow daily at about 5 a.m. So it is a little bit of a day lag. Again, this is exactly how it was compared to our old system. But again, I said that the Arrow information, when you make that linkage in Arrow, that's fed back into Ramp. And that connection back to Ramp is done twice daily, once at noon and then once at about 12:30 a.m. So one of the questions that had come up several times, and there was a little misunderstanding about this, it does not have to be, more than just the PI can do this in Arrow. It's actually everyone who is listed as a study team member on the Arrow protocol record. They can make these connections between Arrow and Ramp. It is not only the PI. Okay. The next hot topic, and I would say that this is one that we've heard a lot. And it's one that we have also within RSP felt that we need to make some adjustments to the Ramp notifications. So this is one of our top priorities. Ramp has a lot more notifications than our old system did. They are triggered by lots of different actions and they go to lots of different people and different situations. And we are completely aware that many of the Ramp notifications are not really as clear as we would like them to be. They're the feedback that we're getting from everyone, we know which ones are not clear. I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't know. In some cases, you can tell who all got the Ramp notification, and in other cases, multiple people are getting the Ramp notification, but you can't tell because you're the only person on the message. The other feedback that we've received is the PIs are getting copied on a lot of these messages. And I've seen many cases where the PIs have replied to the messages. And I would say generally those replies that I've seen, the PIs were they weren't angry or annoyed. They were more in the tone that, yep, I took care of this, but I'm not sure if I need to do anything else. Because there are so many messages going to the PI, and I think many of us thought, we don't really need to loop in the PIs. We are drastically reducing the number of messages that will be going to the PIs. I think there's something like 3 or 5 messages that will go to the PIs as opposed to several dozen. We are also working on the wording. Again, we want them to be more clear. We also know that often you don't know if someone has taken an action. So some of them, the initial request, a notification will go out, but then the follow-up or subsequent actions, there's no notification coming back. So that's also in the priority list here for notifications. The thing I want to point out here, though, is this does require programming, and it's going to require us to coordinate with Huron and the Huron tech team to do a patch to ramp. So this is not an immediate fix. Our ERA team is working with the Huron tech team to figure out the best approach for making these changes. So it's something that's not going to happen next week or the week after, but we're diligently working on making these changes. So more to come on this, and I think it will definitely be an improvement once we get this in place. There's been obviously a lot of questions just about routing in general, and we really want people to take a look at the routing guidance on the RSP homepage. It is accurate and up to date. And as we tweak it, we're updating the guidance on the homepage. So if you're not really sure how to route something, please take a look at that and use that as your first guide on what you need to do. And unlike our old system, in many cases, different actions that you need to take, you do not need to create a new ramp record. You just take the actions associated with the funding proposal or the award. So that's a big change from our old system, and our guidance reflects when to do that. And then another thing that's important to note here is the post-award team in RSP is working to put together some processes, some internal processes. So additional functions will be turned on in the coming months that are more non-financial post-award related. So right now, the guidance likely says email or work directly with your accountant. In the coming months, those actions are going to be shifted into RAMP as well. So with that, I'm going to pause and ask if there's any other questions that have come up that we should address.
There's a question about, again, resources, wondering if there could be a master job aid document that combines all the different PDFs into one sewn together document. And I just put a response in the chat that all the job aid content was clipped out of the user guides. So I think that the user guides kind of are the solution to this. And there's a user guide for funding proposals. There's one for awards, and then there's one for agreements. And this is certainly something that we could think about, in the future, how to better display the different resources. I get a little nervous about creating new PDFs and things, because then when we make a change, we have to change it. We'd have to change it in the user guide and the job aid and the master job aid. So all of the job aid content is currently available in the user guides. And I think if you're searching for something to answer questions, maybe that's an easier way to go. But I appreciate the question. And
yeah, Melanie, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there is a ton of materials out there, and for those of you who may not be as familiar with how many of our web pages work, but they're sort of collapsible sections. And there's a button on there that allows you to expand everything all at once. And when you do that, then you can use just the browser's search, the Control F function, to type your word in and find it on the page much easier. And I find myself doing that a ton. I just hit expand all, and then I use the Control F and I type my word in and can easily find like the various places that's mentioned. But we're all always open to suggestions and ideas. And I would say use that RAMP mailbox, put something in the subject line like web resource suggestion so that it's pretty clear, and just put your suggestion in there, because we're taking all of that in. The ERA team here in RSP is really organizing all of those comments and figuring out what we need to prioritize. And some of that I think is going to be training things that are kind of folded into the RED program as we go forward. So now we're going to shift. Melanie, was there anything else?
Just a question about whether there'd be further training once the new post-award features are turned on within RAMP, and Bridget popped in and said yes. And so yes, once we start using RAMP for additional tasks and additional items, there will be additional training that will be available. We'll also eventually, as Mark mentioned, be rolling in some of the RAMP kind of instructor-led trainings into the RED cycle of courses too.
You know, this is a little new for us, and I'm just going to put in a plug for the micro learning videos. I think those are really, really great. Often they have multiple related topics within them, and you might only need to watch like the first 2 minutes instead of all 4 of the minutes, but a 4-minute video, kind of doable. All right, I'm going to turn over to Jenny. Jenny, I'm going to move to the next slide, and Jenny's going to fill us in on some of the proposal questions and resources.
Great, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Bell, and I'm on the proposal team here at RSP. And so, like we've been doing on these other Red Hot sessions, we'll go through each of the pre-award teams and sort of give an update from our team. And what I'm going to do in the next few slides is actually first ask for your help on something, and then I'm going to give you some tips. So hopefully I can add some value to your usage of RAMP with things I've bumped into as we've been learning it over the next month. But there's a lot of details on this slide and the next, but the main ask that we're asking for your help with is just remembering that RAMP is a communication tool in addition to a workflow tool. This is a really large university. These records pass through lots of hands, lots of people see them. And the more complete and clear your record is, especially with those submission instructions being as clear and as detailed as possible, would not only help the proposal team, we'd be happy, and that's fine, but more importantly, it's going to help your proposal get reviewed quicker. It's going to have less issues. We're going to be going back to you with less questions. So it will be reviewed better, faster. It will and move out of RSP to the sponsor more timely. Right now, we're having to go back and ask a lot of questions of people, and they know the answer, but it's just sort of missing from the RAMP record. So back to like my big idea here, think about like you're talking to us and all the other folks you're talking to as this record moves forward. So what that looks like is explained here on this first slide. So asking you to please remember to advance complete records in the workflow. And everything on this slide is new info. This is exactly everything we needed back when we used the old system, which will not be named, which is named on this slide. So ramp records are required for every submission. Yes, that's not new. The attachments listed here, these are all exactly the same as what we asked for on a whisper record. We could get into what makes this trickier about ramp or different from the old system. I'll talk about that later. I think I have a slide later when I talk about some tips about attachments. But these attachments are all the same. You need to attach the funding announcement, scope of work, budget and justification. Remember, we want to see the budget as an attachment or filled in the record. If the indirect cost rate is different from our typical federal negotiated rate, we need to see documentation attached explaining that the sponsor only has an indirect rate of 10% for this solicitation, and we need the documentation there. Great. Labeling attachments as clearly as possible would be helpful because, as you know, it's just an alphabetized list of all the attachments. I'll talk more about attachments in a minute. Submission instructions, that's one that's just been tricky for us lately. I don't know when you can edit the submission instructions, but as the record moves forward, if departments and then dean's offices and divisions can look at those submission instructions and update them, add additional information if needed, that would be very helpful, telling us exactly who is submitting, by what deadline, and how. Those are like the three big pieces of information we need to know: date and time, what we need to send, and how we need to send it. If you can edit that field in the funding proposal and you are later on in the chain of workflow, I guess I'm speaking to dean's offices here, please feel free to go in there and update those submission instructions as clear and detailed as possible. And then there was one more thing on there. SF424 is error-free. So just like when we had the whisper and Cayuse pair, RSP wants to be getting that record when the SF424 part is free of errors. Of course, you may be encountering things where you need extra help. That's understandable. But in general, you're trying to get to the place where your whole package is ready to go and for RSP to do what we need to do to get it out the door. Okay, we can go to the next slide. One data field in particular on the funding proposal smart form is the deadline field. And we would like your help on this field as well. The data field is called internal deadline field. And maybe the name of that is throwing folks off, but that's the date and time you need RSP to submit the proposal. We've seen a handful of proposals come over with a deadline on it. And then we get an email that actually, oh, the deadline's actually a week earlier than what's on the record. So again, if you have the ability to edit that field and any part of the workflow, please do to make sure that's accurate. What I think is cool about RAMP is in our own inboxes, that my inbox, you can see that, like the deadlines, what's due, and you can do some filtering by deadline. And our team does heavily rely on that deadline date to prioritize and triage proposals that we're reviewing and submitting. So just a reminder that especially when, let's say we are a sub, so let's say University of Missouri is applying for an NSF grant and we are a sub award, we want to know in this internal deadline field when we at RSP need to submit the documents to Missouri. We don't really care when Missouri is going to submit them to NSF. What's important to us is when we have to get it out the door for you. One thing we noticed about continuation records, so those are for progress reports, is there is not a data field to enter a deadline. So if you can remember, and a lot of people are already doing this, which is how I figured it out as a tip to share. If you can put the due date in the title, so then it'll jump out for everyone. So, something we're asking you to remember, but if you think about it, if you could please add that deadline date into the title of the continuation record, that will help. All right. So still talking about communications, a couple reminders and things we've learned. So as you know, there's different ways to do things in RAMP, different ways to do the same thing in RAMP. And a lot of times we don't know, should we send an ancillary review or send email about this? I would say in general, we're still willing to take those either way. If you refer to the routing guidance, most times we have ancillary review or send email there because we just haven't lived with it long enough to know what is needed or what actions would be ancillary review versus send email. At this point of using the tool, the important thing to know is on the slide. When you send an ancillary review or use the send email activity within RAMP, a notification email goes out to whoever you've selected. If you just add comment, just remember no email goes out. So add comment is very useful. I do it all the time, but you just have to remember that you're not pinging anybody to let them know something has happened on add comment. You've probably already seen in this bright yellow highlighted thing. This is another place where we are asking for your help. If you've already done ancillary review or used send email in RAMP, we have got it. We have got the notification and we're getting to it as soon as we can. So there's no need to follow up with an additional personal email, additional Microsoft Teams message. I think we were all a little nervous when we first went live of, I just did this thing in RAMP. What happened? There's actually a way in RAMP to check if a notification's been sent and to whom. I don't think we're showing that today, but maybe we can in the future. But in general, you can trust that if you use ancillary review or send email, an email has landed in the specialist or the team's inbox and we will get to it. It's tough when we already have those notifications and then we're also getting Teams messages and personal emails. And then we start to get really bogged down in all these additional communications and it pulls our time away from just getting done whatever we need to get done for you. Another note here that pre-award inbox is monitored during business hours, RSP business hours, Monday through Friday. So again, you can trust that if it's landed there, we will take care of it. Okay, I have another slide. Okay, so that's the end of me asking you for things. And now I'm going to share a couple tips that I hope will be helpful to you, not just in working with RSP, but just your work with each other using RAMP. And oops, I just lied. The first one is about working with proposal team. If you did not figure this out already, if the specialist on a record is still RSP proposal team, then if you need something on that record, you want to send an ancillary review to the team because that's the named specialist on the record. To do that, you select RSP proposal team as a person. We are a fake person and we do get the email notifications for that dummy person, RSP proposal team. So that's something you really do need to remember. It seems like a lot of people are doing that now, but you will not find proposal team as an organization. We're a person. All right, now it's not about working with proposal team anymore. It's just about using RAMP in general. When you're using ancillary reviews, I think they're a little tricky. And I think as we move forward, we're going to continue to, tweak how we use these, all of us at the university as users. But one thing to note, submit versus manage. I wanted to point out that submit ancillary review and manage ancillary review are two different activities on that left side of your workspace. Manage is what you use to send someone an ancillary review. if you are going to respond, provide what's been asked for, give a definitive answer, yes or no, close it out, you use the submit activity. When you submit, an email notification does go to the person who sent you that ancillary review. You can go into manage and you can edit what that person sent to you. And it's going to add additional text there where you type in, but it's not going to notify the person that you responded at all. So just something to know about that submit versus manage and how those two activities work differently. You won't have submit ancillary review as an activity unless someone has sent you one. It's one of those activities that like appears and goes away. It's smart enough to know that you can't submit one if someone didn't send you a review. All right, so check those out. All right, so attachments. This is something that I've seen some best practices or great practices coming through the departments and the dean's offices. And then when we see the records at RSP, I like learn things about how people are organizing the attachments differently. And so these are some ideas for you. I think this is another one where as we continue to all use it, we'll figure out even better ways to use the attachments. You've noticed, and I said earlier, that the attachments just all dump right there into that attachments tab. And they're just alphabetical. There's no field for who the author was. There's no field for when it was last updated. So some things that we've learned or seen from campus that may be helpful to you as we continue to learn. Thinking about how you're naming your attachments. I've seen some people number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then other places in the record, they can refer to attachment 3, attachment 7, especially one that has a lot of attachments. That's an idea. Dating them. I try when RSP signs to always add the date. So then the next time someone looks at that record, they could at least take a glance at the attachments and the date will pop out at them. So putting the date in the title of the attachment. I'm going to skip the next one. Well, no, I'll go to that one. Sponsor number workaround. So this is a trick where maybe someone will come up with something better. You've probably seen that there's no field in RAMP currently for a sponsor number, meaning a confirmation number after we've submitted the proposal. And for a lot of sponsors, we love to search by that record, especially NIH, that grant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 number. So easy to pull that unique number and search. And there's not a data field in RAMP for that. It's on the enhancements list, of course, it's something we'd like, but one workaround we've seen is if you name a record that sponsor confirmation number and then upload it as an attachment, you will be able to search for that sponsor number. So Mark, if you go to the next slide, the search that I have in the red oval on the right, that's where I would search for the title of a document. So once I submit something, let's say to NIH, I'm trying to name it, I'm trying to remember to name it as the confirmation number, upload it to the record as an attachment, and then I can search for it easily using that search over there. So that's one tip. If you find a better way, let us know. Can you go backwards one, Mark? All right, upload revision. This is the last thing I wanted to say about attachments. If you have not discovered this trick yet, when you add an attachment, so you click the add attachment activity, it opens a window and it pulls up the list of all the attachments that are currently there. Next to the name of each attachment are 3 little dots. Click on those 3 little dots and you can upload a revision to that document. So that will clean up that laundry list of alphabetized attachments. If you have a revision, not to update version 2 or upload version 2, version 3, version 4, so they're all separate and starting to really build up on that attachments tab, you can upload revision by clicking add attachment and then the 3 dots next to the name of the attachment you want to revise. So I think that's helpful sometimes too. All right, that's enough about attachments. And then my last tip before I turn it over to Andrea is, yes, this slide. I wanted to remind you and myself about searching for things in RAMP. So I talked about that search bar with the oval or circled by an oval over there. I search for title of proposals and over there. I use the confirmation number over there. That searches all the attachments and kind of searches all over the record for you. So I've been starting to use that one a little bit more. The filter by that I have the circle around, don't forget that you can add levels of filtering. And then also don't forget, and I'm putting this here because also I have not used this enough myself. You can click that little blue question mark and it pops open that pop-up that we have here on the slide. And you can really tailor your filtering to say, do not include or include specific dates. And all those instructions are right there. So I'm starting to learn how to use these better, but just a reminder that that is there. And then my very last tip before I turn it on is don't forget that after you filter, you can click on the blue heading of each of those columns. So you see that on this image here, we've got like direct sponsor, submission type, application deadline, specialist. If you click on that blue text, then whatever, let's say you've added a couple of filters, so you've whittled it down to Dr. Bell submitting to NIH, you've got all theirs there, but then you want to go by application deadline, you want to filter by that. Click application deadline and it's going to filter, can't remember if it goes high to low or low to high, click it again and it'll reverse that. So some of the latest tips that I've discovered, as you all discover more, please send them our way. And thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Andrea.
I think we could take a couple questions if there was anything in the chat that's you need to address for proposals.
Sure. I didn't even look at the chat, I admit.
Yeah,
so.
there are a few things that had come through. So I'll just start at the top. So there's a question first before we started on proposals about where the best places to direct feedback for our wish list for upgrades or updates to RAMP. Do people have those, Mark? Should they send that to the RAMP at RSP email?
Yeah, I think the RAMP at RSP email address is the best. And then again, put suggestion, idea, comment, or something in the subject line that helps us organize it a little bit.
All right, great. And then another question about, Jenny, when you were talking, you had mentioned an internal deadline field. And Jenny Dahlberg said she only sees the application submission deadline.
When you are filling out the funding proposal smart form, one of the early questions is called internal submission deadline.
Yes, I actually went into a record and I don't see that.
Okay.
So it's a federal, so maybe that's the difference. If it's maybe it's a non-fed, it does allow you to see that. But I was looking for that because that would be helpful to clarify, because I'm not seeing it on federal submissions.
Okay, let me look.
Okay, while she's looking, I'll continue. So then there's a note about job aids that I responded to. And then there was a note about adding an email function to the agreements tab. That's similar to the grants tab. I see this as an upgrade request, so we can add that to our list of ideas. What else do we have here? Oh, I know, Jenny, you're looking at something, but
That's
there's
okay.
another-
I'll find a screenshot when Andrea's talking and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay,
So I
great.
focus on questions. Yeah.
Okay, a couple other questions. Does RSP look at the comments as a standard process? Or is this something RSP doesn't check on every proposal?
Yes. We are checking submission instructions and history. So history is where we're seeing the when you add comment to a record, then yes, it is going there. And that's a good point, that sometimes as an RSP proposal submitter, I go to the submission instructions and it doesn't make total sense. So then I go to the history and I do get additional information in the comments. Yep.
There is another comment about if there's a way that folks could receive an email when PI completes the compliance questions or certifies the record. I think that's another upgrade idea.
Enhancement idea, yep.
And then there's a question Trish had, and I'm not sure exactly what you were talking about at this time, but she said if it's contained in the document title along with the other words, will that work? So I don't know if Trish, if you want to come off mute.
That was in reference to using the grant number in a document so you could search for it later. If it is contained in that title along with, other characters like, the PI name or something, can you still use that way later? Will that be helpful, or should it only be the grant number?
I'm not exactly sure, so I want you to test it.
Okay.
Thanks,
We'll let
Trish.
you know. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then a question about the revision of attachments. Can you do that where you click the three dots? Can you do that when the record's in any status?
I think so. Yeah,
I've
I've been able to. Sorry,
Yes.
Brenda. Yep.
And I just do have one point that I would like to make is that, yes, we do want you to revise documents, but please, if you have a, revised budget that needs to be sent to the sponsor, don't replace that original version of the budget, because we need to check the revised budget against the original budget to make sure that we have made the corrections that the sponsor has asked for. So what I would recommend is, putting that new revised budget with the new date of the revised budget in the name of the attachment. There are other times that, yes, it makes sense to replace files, because sometimes we will have 6 budgets, but we do need to keep reviewing based on all of the requests that the sponsor is asking us to make. Jenny, do you have anything to add to that? Does that make sense?
Yep, that definitely does.
Okay, and then there's a question about when RSP submits to NIH.
I just read
Do
that
you see that one?
from
Okay.
Mandy. Yep. So she's asking about that search. If the number is somewhere in the comments, is it searchable from that search box? I don't think so, but I'm not 100% sure. So try it out. And the reason I found this was just by testing it out. So give it a try, but I don't think it is if you just put that number in the comments. If you try it and you find it, let me know, because that would be good to know.
Great.
All right.
Okay, I think we're good. We're ready for Andrea.
Great.
And I just wanted to mention that we will download the questions today. A lot of times what we do is we use the chat history, the questions from sessions like this to help inform some of our FAQs there on the website. So we will do that at this session as well.
All right, great. And I'm going to turn things over to Andrea and just let me know when you want me to advance.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone. I have one slide, but I was also jotting a few notes down. A lot of the stuff Jenny and Mark went through earlier. So the first, I guess, tip or trick is to ensure that you're using the original funding proposal. If you're doing a modification, that you're not creating a new funding proposal, or if it's a converted record and MSN number. We're basically attaching, if you're doing modifications, you're attaching it to the original funding award, which is attached to the original funding proposal. So there's no need to we're trying to not duplicate creating new awards when we don't need to, or duplicating records when we don't need to. So as the dust settles, we're seeing less and less of this, but just again, something to think about. And so if you have a new project, a completely new project, that's a great example of when you would create a new funding proposal. So, and the other biggest question is, when do we do these modifications? So the new awards, if you're waiting for a new award, if the department receives a notice of award, you can send it to award acceptance at rsp.wis.edu. Or if RSP receives it in that place, we will create the funding award for new awards. So we will initiate those. But for existing awards, so this is a little tricky, so I'm gonna just break it down. If it's an existing award and the department receives a notice of award, you would create a mod request and attach all your documentation there. We get those requests, and those requests are divvied by the team that is addressing the question or the request. So when you're waiting for, let's say, for example, a new year 5 or the next year of funding, you would attach the notice of award to that request, and we receive it, we approve that request, and then we create a mod. If the NOA is received by RSP, then we would send it to the department to create that request. So the request first, we receive the request, we create a mod. Departments and divisions cannot create the mods, we create the mods. So that's just kind of, so y'all are going to be doing the requests. There's mod, I know, but just takes a little repetition, little going, and it'll get a lot easier as we go along. And we also got this question about, when does the department initiate a mod, like when do we do mod requests? And I think the answer is just check the ramp routing guidance. It does say when you would do a mod request and where that would go, to which team it would go to. So for example, the award setup team gets a lot of requests for new sub project creations. That would be a mod request. Change your PI would be a mod request, but it goes to the different teams first. So if you see, let's say you do a mod request for a new award, or I'm sorry, for next year of funding, you would do the mod request. We approve the mod request. We create the mod from that request, and we attach all the documentation. Right now, you would probably see it in a draft status. That means we have it. It's there. It's in our queue. And as long as it's, you know, the specialist or approver is the award setup team, it's there. So I know we've been getting a lot of requests like, hey, I got this, or hey, I sent this, are you getting it? Yes, we're getting it. Let's see. The other one that we get, the other question that I see a lot and we're seeing a lot is questions about advanced account requests. They do need to be, the funding proposal does need to be in a sponsor review state. And I put a little picture down there just to show you on the funding proposal what that looks like. At that point, the department can request the advanced account through the process that allows their division to approve it first. So that way we're getting legitimate requests and not, you know, months, you know, I guess, yeah, just legitimate requests in general. So the division's looking at it. Another, I guess I didn't put this here, but I just jotted down a few notes. Things that I think are holding up a lot of records is, first, I think there's a lot of records sitting in unit review for setup. We just keep checking if you're not sure. Again, I'll put the email for the RAMP awards team in the chat, but we're seeing a lot sitting in unit review for approval. So just keep checking and making sure that you're checking those, because if they sit in there too long, we're not sure if anyone's looking at them either. But you know, when you do a mod request, please make sure that your request is clear and specific about what it is that you need. So details, there's no such thing as too much detail. It's better for us to know what exactly you need so we can help you rather than go back and forth. Number two, again, as Jenny mentioned, attachments, make sure we have all the attachments so we don't have to go back and forth asking for things. Number three, making sure that the full budgets are reconciled. It just, again, the budget reconciliation and the financial setup, go through the trainings, and I'm more than happy. You can always call me and I can walk you through it, but it just takes a little practice to get used to. Number four, making sure the IRB is linked or the iCook is linked. We do have to, if that means we cannot just push those through without linking them. So number five, making sure that the PI has completed the FCOI training and the AOR is completed. So those are the regular, and that's not just for RAMP, that was also in the other system things. Those are the regular things that hold records back. But yeah, I think that this is just my quick snippet about lessons learned. There's always more we can learn. And again, I love learning from you all. And my team is always more than happy to help as long as we, you know, we're trying to get through it. So my last bullet is thanks for your patience and support. We are pushing these through as much as we can. There is quite a number in there still. So yes, I see that it is but again, it's in the queue where we see it. We're trying to get through them as much as possible. That's all I got. And then Bridget is next.
Hi, everyone. To piggyback on Andrea's part about award mods and mod requests, for no cost extensions, if you are doing award modification requests for no cost extensions, these require ancillary reviews by your division office and is reflected in the guidance. So job aids are available for how to initiate and send an ancillary review, and also as a division, how to respond to an ancillary review. Just a clarifying note, as we've been noticing in some troubleshooting in the RAMP in-mail inbox, RSP does not require PI approval for no cost extensions, but if your division does require it and they indicate that you need to certify or something like that, use the ancillary review functionality for this as well. There's not a certify activity as there is for funding proposals, but there is the ancillary review option for those PI, for those things going on there. So just a clarifying note on no cost extensions. We appreciate your patience, as Andrea has said, with award mods and mod requests, but and we're just learning as we go along. So if you have HHS no cost extensions, I would be processing those, and we have our post-award people doing that. And as a reminder, we've talked about this earlier on in the presentation, there are some items that aren't done in award mods. So for example, rebudgets and carryovers and things like that, just a reiteration, those do not go in there. And if you have a no cost extension with a carryover, submit just your no cost extension in the award mod request, and that carryover will be done separately. I know that it's a lot easier to just route it through and RAMP and do that, but we got to be kind of strategic and keys out, especially if there's, like, for example, one modification we get for a no cost extension and another modification for a carryover. We got to tease those out. So just a clarifying note on that as well from post award. Thank you.
Red, I'm wondering if there's any questions that we should address.
It looks like just one for so far for award setup, and the question was when an award is assigned by the specialist. Oh, is assigned, but the specialist is listed as RSP award setup specialist is the individual receiving the email.
Yes, they are. They go to that same email below that I entered.
Okay, and then just, oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I don't see the chat, so I'm wondering if we're ready to move on to Vasanthi.
I think we can move on to the agreements, and then hopefully we have a few minutes at the end to circle back to some of these.
Okay, great. All right, Vasanthi, take it away.
Thank you. Can you advance the slide, please? Hi, everyone. I just have a few tips and things that I've noticed the past few weeks. One thing that I'd like to highlight is about sponsor deadlines. If you have an agreement with a sponsor deadline, please also include it in the title of the agreement, especially if it's a short deadline. Anything less than 2 weeks would be a short deadline. The reason is when the agreement comes to my unassigned list, the deadline doesn't show up on the list, and I need to go into the edit agreement to check when the deadline is. And if it's a very short deadline, that could be something that I miss for a day or so. And also it affects the negotiator's work list. If you enter the deadline on the agreement, when the negotiator opens up the record, it will show up on the title of the agreement. It will make it easier for the negotiator to know that this agreement has a deadline. So the deadlines that you enter under the edit agreement function goes into the work list, and the negotiator will see it as, when he looks at the entire work list, it shows up, oh, this agreement has a deadline, but when they actually open up the record, the deadline is not prominent. So that's the reason why I'm pushing this a lot, and it helps us and it helps you to get the agreement done within the sponsor deadline. And the other thing that I would like to request is if you have any information that you would like the contracts team to know, please include it under edit agreement, general information, question 11, comments. Anything about submission of the agreement or any information. There's no such thing as too much information. The contracts team loves getting a lot of information. It helps us to negotiate the agreement, and it reduces the number of times that we have to go to and fro to get the information from you. The other thing I wanted to highlight is the view all correspondence feature that has replaced the SPO action. So you can actually go into that, click on that and see what's happening with the record, because the team updates the action that they've taken on the correspondence feature. Next slide. The other thing, these things are just some reminders that I would like to give you. The contracts team has received a number of ancillary reviews for approval when we noticed that it actually was meant for the dean's office. So please note that for non-funded agreements, the ancillary review has to go to the dean's office and not to the RSP contracts team. And the other thing is, don't forget to hit submit function, because that is what that will send the agreement to the unassigned list. I've had campus reach out to me about the agreements, and then I realized that it is still in pre-submission stage. So don't forget that last step of sending the agreement to the unassigned list. And for sponsor research agreements, we need to have a related funding proposal record. Contracts team has received a lot of questions about this. This is the only way RSP can set up your award. So you need to have a related funding proposal record. Thank you.
Are there any questions about agreements for Vasanthi?
There are a couple. The first one is, what do we use in RAMP for a federal fixed price contract with no package number? Nothing to search for because there's no package ID opportunity or CFTA number. Maybe this is a proposal question, or I don't know, what do we use in RAMP? Julie, I don't know if you want to unmute.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So in the past, we've always used the grants module and contracts, right, for fixed price, for federal fixed price contracts. But it's not an agreement, it's a fixed price contract with the USDA. So if you go into the grants module, you can't go any further because you can't search for anything. So you just get stopped. But it's not an agreement. Does that make sense?
I don't know if the question makes that much sense. Maybe we
It's
could,
how to set it up. So, I've got an investigator, she's requesting a fixed price contract from the USDA. I was informed that I should use the grants module under contracts to push this through at the proposal stage. But I can't because there's no federal, package number.
You shouldn't need it. I've done this for others.
Yeah, but
You might-
it won't let me go forward. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I don't enter something, it says no funding opportunities selected, and I can't do anything with it.
If you uncheck submission system to system, it should allow you.
That is unchecked.
I don't know.
so this would be a good example of, why don't you stop in the office hours? And that way we can look at your screen and we can help you through this, but
Is that the right module I should be using, or should I be using the
Well,
agreements?
so it's going to be funded. So as Vasanthi just said, all funding requires a funding proposal, even if it's also a contract.
Okay,
That's the funding mechanism that needs negotiation. So you would create a funding proposal record
Yep.
that is of the type contract. And then you would also need to create an agreement record that's associated with that funding proposal so that the contracts team can do whatever negotiation is required with that contract.
So an easy way to remember this is if in Whisper, the RSP team would have set up your award, this would be something that's going to need both a funding proposal and an
And the agreement.
agreement. Yes.
thank you.
And then another question for agreements. What should we enter for project start date on an agreement record when it is not tied to a sponsored project and the agreement is valid starting once fully executed?
It should be the date of the agreement, but you would not have that yet. Does it not allow you to proceed if you don't have that date? If you're not allowed to proceed with setting up the agreement, you can enter a date that seems right to you and enter it in comments that this is dependent on the date of the agreement, and we will note that and act on that information when we complete the agreement.
Great, thanks. And then another one, what happens to those agreements that were created in Whisper, were pending execution and are now in RAMP without a funding proposal? Will these be created by the main contact of the RAMP record or by RSP?
It has to be created by the main contact, by campus.
Okay. And I think that is it for the questions in chat. Unless I missed one, then I invite people to raise their hand, unmute, and let us know.
All right, I just have a couple things to close out. So again, this going back to some of what Jenny was saying, and as we've kind of learned, often we need to hear the same things over and over before they kind of stick. But we're still seeing a lot of proposals that are coming in that are due the same day. And this is extremely risky on your part and the part of your PI. So we're really asking you to work with your investigators and make sure that these are getting to RSP before the day that they are due. We've been doing the best that we can, but this is really very, very risky. And then we've had this happen. This is not new. This has not really nothing to do with RAMP, but it's a reminder that if you are working with a new sponsor and maybe a new sponsor submission system or reporting system, it is really, really important that you start very early in the process, like a couple weeks before you need to actually do the submission. So the best thing to do is, if you're not sure, you can email the pre-award mailbox and they'll check to see if this is a system that is either completely new to UW or if it's just new to you. And if it's completely new to the UW, it's going to require often many days to make sure that we have all the appropriate logins and permissions so that we can submit to that sponsor system. So to be safe, if you think you're working with a new sponsor system, just check with RSP and do it weeks in advance. Typically, these things are not just like the spur of the moment from an investigator. So if you can help with that, that will really help ensure that we can get access to that submission system and have a successful proposal submitted. I'm going to repeat a couple things that you've heard already, and that is there's a lot of built-in communications within RAMP. The notifications, the emails that go out, and then the inboxes that we all have. So we're really asking for your help. Don't submit RAMP records, then use the RAMP email functionality, and then email the staff or send them a Teams message to see if they got an email or a RAMP record. We're getting them, and all of that stuff is just clogging up the system, and it's really taking away from the time that our teams need to actually work not only on your proposal or your award, but also the your colleagues and those across the university. So please recognize that the RAMP system has this communications built in, and that we're getting the notifications and we're taking the actions and we're processing things. Okay, I'm going to say this again. This is Jenny mentioned this early, but I think it's really, really important because this is another area that is that's very risky to your proposals and the proposals of your investigators. We need to have all of the required documents in the RAMP record before we can submit it. And this is particularly important when we are a subrecipient, because often when we're a sub, we have a lot of additional documents that we need to send to our pass-through entity. So make sure all of those are included in the RAMP record. And then we're seeing a lot of proposals coming in where the budget justifications do not match the budget. And this is particularly concerning because often this is one of those things where they can get kind of rejected by the sponsor when they see a wildly mismatch between budget justification and the budget. And we're trying to catch these in RSP, and that is where we have a lot of back and forth and a lot of time wasted. If this could be done up front and caught as it's moving through the department and the dean's office, it would really streamline everything. And again, going back to situations where we're the subrecipient, please make sure that those subrecipient forms are completed. Or if there's reps and certs that need to go along, a lot of this information is on our website. And if you can complete as much of that in advance before routing those records to RSP, it really just streamlines the overall process. Final plug here for our materials. Again, we'll be sending these slides out, so you'll have these links. The training resources, we're continuing to update that. We had some really good suggestions for making it clear when things are changing. The frequently asked questions, we're going to be going through kind of doing a sweep and updating some of them. Some of the FAQs are no longer needed because we are actually now live with RAMP, so we don't need the what happens if we don't go live. We'll be taking those off. And then we continue to send messages through the dean's offices and other lists. So please pay attention to those and encourage your colleagues to go through the training, look at those resources, look for the answers there first. That's a big help. So with that, we have just a few minutes left. If there's any final questions, I'm going to stop sharing actually. Anything else?
I don't see anything. A couple of notes about resources, wondering if things can get updated. And yeah, we are going to continue looking at our, not only the red materials and the, RAMP materials, but other things on all of our pages to make sure they reflect the new system.
So with that, I'm going to mention one thing. There is a little get together today at the Discovery Building in the Hector DeLuca Forum, which is in the first floor of the Discovery Building at 4 o'clock. It's a kind of a celebration of RAMP Go Live. I believe that Vice Chancellor Rob Kramer and Vice Chancellor Steve Ackerman will be there to share some comments. That starts at 4 o'clock. If you can make it, we'd love to see you in person, say hi, and just be able to network and interact with each other. So if you're going to be there, I'll be there. Be great to see you and stop by and say hi. So with that, I really appreciate you all taking the time, and I think we can stop the session. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.